Hi everyone, and welcome back to Northlight Photographic Workshops. I'm Bill Schwab, as is usual, and today I've got another kind of a fun thing for you to do, and it's pretty easy. You know, I've been doing a lot of these alternative processes with you here on the YouTube channel, and I really have never gotten to the real basic one of that whole thing, and that's basically cyanotypes, blueprints. It's a process invented by Sir John Herschel back in 1842, and it's pretty simple. I mean, there's basically two chemicals. It needs to be done as a part 1 and a part 2 kind of a thing, but it's basically Ferric Ammonium Citrate, the green stuff. We'll get to that later. There's green and there's brown. The green's the better. Brown will work, but the green is better. But you can kind of save all that by just buying it from one of your local art supply stores. I know Dick Blick carries it. I think Jerry's Artorama. It's Jacquard. It's basically a cyanotype kit. And I've just got one part of it right here because I had a ton of the other part of it. But it comes in two parts. It comes in ferric ammonium citrate. And then the other thing you need is potassium ferrocyanide. And as you can see, I've got kind of a lifetime supply of that from back in my, more analog photo days. It worked great in photography as a bleach and as a bleach for papers. You would bleach out certain papers before you retoned them and that kind of thing. But that's all aside. Is potassium ferrocyanide, ferric ammonium citrate are the only two things that you need. They're easily available, and they'll be in links down below as far as where to get them. There'll also be the formula down below. Today I'm going to use Herschel's formula. As I say, it's very simple. It's 25 grams of ferric ammonium citrate to 100 milliliters of distilled water, and it's the same 25 grams of potassium ferrocyanide in 100 milliliters of distilled water. Now, what you're going to need are those two chemicals, obviously. You're going to need a couple of brown bottles for part 1 and part 2. That's unless you really just want to mix it up for one use, but you know, it'll hang around for quite a long time if you just want to mix it this one time and save a bigger amount, a larger amount in a plastic bottle to be used again. Now, one thing I will warn against is that the part 1, which is the ferric ammonium citrate, will grow a mold on top of it. It gets kind of this slimy looking mold on the top, and it doesn't hurt anything, but it will get into your emulsions and when you coat it, that kind of thing. So what you want to do is, if it does get to that point where you open up the bottle and you do find some mold on the top of it, is just simply filter it out with some coffee filters like I've shown you in other videos. Just use like a Mr. Coffee filter in a funnel over a jar, and you just pour it in there and funnel it out. Now, it's important that you leave it in brown bottles because UV light will get to it and it will kind of dull its effectiveness over time, that kind of thing. However, it's not really light sensitive until you mix the two of them together. Now, as I say, it's one of the earliest light sensitive photography processes, and it was practiced by a lot of pretty influential, interesting people, and you know, probably the most off would be Anna Adkins, who has only been more recently coming into acclaim for back in the 1800s, doing the work that she did with collecting samples out of the sea of sea life and things like that, and using the cyanotypes or the blueprint to do photograms of these things and put together an incredible book that now is very rare and very beautiful. And if you ever get a chance to see any of her work, definitely look her up, Anna Adkins. But very similar to these type of things here in this book. Now, this little book was created by a friend of mine, Elliot Dudick, and also Meg Griffiths. They came here to a photo stock, the event that I run here every year. And they taught a workshop in doing cyanotypes. And not only did they do cyanotypes, they put together these little books. So everybody that came to the workshop learned how to hand bind one of these little books. And they went around the woods here where the workshop is in the forest here in northern Michigan, and they collected different samples of things to use, feathers and leaves and ferns and things to use. And these are very reminiscent of the work that Anna Adkins did with things that she found in the sea and in tide pools and seaweeds and different things like that. But anyway, this is just one fun thing that you can do with it. You can also use a negative. You know, I mean, obviously it's a photographic process. You can use a negative and also burn a cyanotype image. Now that's what we're going to do today. And it's a really fun thing. You can do it with either a UV burner, like I've been using for my platinum and palladium stuff, which you'll see up here if you look in the link that's above right now. That'll show you how to do the platinum and palladium process. And it's very similar. This is just a lot less expensive and, you know, a different color. Obviously, it's blue. But cyanotypes also can be very helpful in other alternative processes. For instance, I like to use them with palladium and salt printing to use as a second layer, kind of as an accenting layer. And I'll show you more about that in another video. I wanted to get to some of that as well, but I really couldn't get to that without showing you cyanotypes. And being that cyanotype is so easy, I figured that this would be a fun video to do for a Saturday, cold Saturday afternoon here in northern Michigan. Now, other things that you're going to need are beakers, you know, a couple various glass beakers to mix up your solutions in, measuring spoon, stirring rod, and eventually also a brush. And that brush you're going to want to use to do the coating on the paper. Now, I normally try to use a non-metal ferruled brush, but this one works in a pinch. It's been one of my, you know, go-tos for the cyanotype process. The other thing is don't use your brush that you've used for your platinum and palladium process. Don't use your Richardson magic brush or anything like that. I mean, you can use a brush like that, but don't use the same brush that you use with your palladium process. You don't want to contaminate and cross-contaminate brushes. Now, as you can see, this one, it started off nice bright white. Now it's got a tinge of blue to it, and so it's easy to tell which brush it is. Now, now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to measure out the solutions now, and so we're going to get to that. But before I get to that, I just wanted to say thank you for watching, and thanks for watching along on these kind of things. And you know, I know that I'm kind of jumping around haphazardly to different processes. You know, I did wet plate already, which you can see a link to up here, and I've done the platinum and palladium processes. There's various other things and videos that I've done that will help you in this process, like paper masking and stuff like that. Now, you know, we'll get to that when I get to it in the process here. But for right now, we're just going to do something very easy, and we're just going to slop this stuff on a piece of paper. Oh yeah, you're going to need some paper. And again, thanks to the people at Hahnemühle, the fine people at Hahnemühle who have been supplying me with a little bit of paper for these videos. I tend to use their Hahnemühle platinum rag paper. It's an incredible paper for alternative processes. It works great for everything. You don't have to pre-treat it for palladium and platinum processes. It works great for salt printing. It works great for cyanotypes, and you know, it's just a really good all-around paper. There's a lot of other things available, and there's a lot of really nice papers out there. I'm not saying this is the only thing to use, but for our purposes in these videos, it's great to use. It's very simple for beginners to use, and seasoned veterans as well, because everybody loves this stuff. But anyway, it's also because they're kind enough to let me use it in these videos. So anyway, you're going to need that. Let's see, what else? You're going to need the Ferric Ammonium Citrate. You're going to need some Potassium Ferrocyanide and a scale to weigh it out. Okay, so let's get down to that, all right? Okay, now what we're going to do is just measure out our ferric ammonium sulfate and our potassium ferrocyanide. And we're going to do that with a simple gram scale. We're going to measure out 25 grams of each. I've already taken the liberty of taking 2 beakers here and filled them with 100 milliliters each of distilled water so that we can just measure our chemicals and just dump it right in and start mixing right away. So first I'm going to get my scale turned on here, and then I've got my handy little tray here. Your scale system might have the same thing. I put the tray on top, but it of course weighs 18.2 grams, so I have to hit the tare to bring it back down to 0. So I'm measuring out 25 grams of each. So I'll open up the ferric ammonium citrate. And as you can see here, as I mentioned earlier, the green version. There's a green and then there's a darker version. The green works a little bit better because it helps with a little bit quicker exposures, that kind of thing. So whereas both will work, the green is the stuff you want to go for. And as long as you go and buy this Jacquard version of it from one of the art supply stores, you'll be good to go. All right, so we're going to measure out 25 grams of this. Now it's very feather light stuff, so 25 grams is going to be quite a bit. So let's see, we are at 11 18. And we are now at 25. So I like to close my stuff up again. Now again, this isn't terribly dangerous stuff to be working with. It's probably one of the least toxic of the processes. Still, you can see here I'm not wearing my gloves. If you feel more comfortable, definitely wear your nitrile gloves when you're doing this. So now I've got my 25 grams here, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to dump it into my solution of water. And as I'm dumping it in, I'm going to use my stirring rod to get it mixing. Now it does dissolve pretty easily, but it does tend to leave a little bit of granular matter in there. And what I always suggest that people do before they use it is to filter this down. Now, it's already gone into a nice solution here, but again, if you could see a little bit closer, you can still see some almost sandy particles on the side of the beaker, and these tend to not really dissolve all that well. They will settle out, that kind of thing, but it's actually much easier, I think, to just take another Mr. Coffee filter and just filter it down into another bottle here, another bottle that you're going to be using, a brown bottle. So okay, so we've already, that's the easiest. I mean, one of the easiest parts right there is mixing this up. So we've got the ferric ammonium citrate. This is our part A. We've got that mixed up. Now we've got another beaker. I'm going to take and I'm going to wipe out my tray here. And then I am going to turn my scale back on again. And we're going to get it tared out again. There we go. Tear. Okay, and now it's time for our potassium ferrocyanide. Now, potassium ferrocyanide, if you get it on your skin, it can be kind of, it can be an irritant. Some people it is, some people it's not. I would just advise not really getting it on your skin. Now, it's a little bit more dense, so it's going to be a little bit less volume in the amount of 25 grams. So we're already at 4.2, we're at 12. And wow, we're almost at 25 right there, just a little bit to top it off. 25 grams. Okay, put our spoon down, put our lid back on our chemistry always before you move on. And now we're going to take our potassium ferrocyanide and we're going to dump it into our second beaker of 100 milliliters. You can see it turns a really nice, cool, bright orange. And it also dissolves down real easy as well. So you're going to want to get that all nice and dissolved down. Now once again, as I said before, you can always filter this as well before you put it into your brown bottle for use. So there we go. We've got our part B solution down. And it's as easy as that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to let these settle for a minute, and then I'm going to filter them down through coffee filters into my brown bottles here, and then we'll move on to our next step, which will be coating our paper. Okay, so now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take our part 1, which is our ferric ammonium citrate, and we're going to filter that down into our part 1 bottle here. So I'm going to get that set up here. I'm going to take a funnel and put it in, and then we're going to go with our coffee filter in the top here. Get that set up and ready to go. And now I'll very carefully and slowly pour in my ferric ammonium citrate solution. Now I can already see that I had it mixed up fairly well, so there's not a whole lot that we're going to be filtering out. But anyway, it's good to do this because this way you get nice clean coatings when you're doing your emulsion coating, and therefore it leads to nice clean images. Takes a little bit of time for these to filter down, which is no problem at all. We've got patience. We're going to cap that. And now it's time to go to our part 2, the potassium ferrocyanide. And we're going to take some paper towel and we're going to wipe out the funnel so that we don't have any cross-contamination. And then we're going to put the funnel in here and we're going to go with another coffee filter. And now we'll go with filtering our potassium ferrocyanide into our part 2 bottle. I can see that that mixed down very clearly as well. So filtration is probably not needed, but again, better to be safe. And there we go, that's all filtered out. Set that aside, we'll cap our bottles. And you're going to want to label them as well, you know, part 1, part 2, because this is going to last, this stuff will last for a few months. So now it's time to get down to the coating of the paper. And we've got our part 1 here and we've got our part 2. We also need a small shot glass. I forgot to mention that earlier, because what you're going to do is you're going to mix equal parts of your part 1 and your part 2 inside of this shot glass. Shake it around before you pour it out here on your paper. And then we're going to take our pre-dampened brush here and we're going to brush it out onto the piece of the paper. Now, I've also got here a small negative, which is what I'm going to be printing right now, and it's about a 3x5 negative. So I'm just going to cover enough of an area on here right now to accommodate this negative. Now, I'm not going to get real technical as far as masking the edges or anything like that, because I want you to see how the edges brush out. But I do like to print with clean edges, and if you look up in one of the links up here right now, it will show you, there'll be a link to a video I've done on how I like to mask my paper before I coat it. But for right now, I'm just going to go with rough edges. However, I do have a masked negative here, and if you also look up on the top links right now, you'll see how I do that, okay? Now, we'll set that aside. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to take our part 1, which is our ammonium ferric sulfate solution, and I'm just going to pour out a small amount of that into the shot glass because it's not going to take much to cover what I need on this paper. Now I'm going to take the part 2 and I am going to pour an approximately equal amount. It's not that critical. There we go. We've got a mixture there. Now I won't even need all of that. I'll get it good and mixed up here. And then I'm going to pour it out onto my piece of paper, just a little bit of it. I haven't poured even all of it on there. And then what I like to do is just brush it in and brush it around the size of the negative that I'm going to be contact printing on there. Now, as you can see, it's got a very yellow-green kind of a look to it right now. And that's just how it should look. Now what I'm going to do is dab off my brush here, take extra solution off. There. Just want a nice even coat on there. It's very easy to see when you have that nice even coat based upon the coloring. Okay, then I set my brush off to here for right now. And what I like to do generally is let this kind of soak into the paper while I rinse my brush down and clean out my shot glass. So I'm going to do that right now and we will come back to this in a second. So now that I've got the paper dry, it's time to sandwich this with the negative into our contact printer. So I take the back off the printer and now I take my paper here that we've got coated and dried, and I'm going to take the negative and lay it over just like that. Now you're going to want to go, again, emulsion to emulsion, just like always in contact printing processes. So now I've got the negative together with the paper. I put it face down in the contact frame like so, and then I put the back on and put the springs in for tension, and we're ready to go. So into the plate burner it goes, and I'm going to set the clock up here, knowing from experience that I would go about 45 minutes. So I'm going to run it up to 45, and we're going to let it go from there. Okay, so we're about a third of the way through our exposure right now, and I want to show you something. I'm going to pull this out, and we're going to take it over here and have a look. Now, as you can see, this is a split back print frame, and that allows me to open one side and check my printing progress on certain printing processes, which are called printing out processes, of which Cyanotype is one of those. So if you come on over here, I'll show you what I mean. So now what we can do is we can open up the frame, and without disturbing the negative and the paper registration, because there's still pressure on this side over here, I can peel back the paper from the negative, and you can see that it's already printing in there, and that you can see the image starting to show up on the paper. Now that helps you, because what I'm looking for with this process is to look for this to get blocked up pretty well, because what will happen is when we go to develop this, which the way that we develop it is in just plain water, we'll be washing out a lot of the unused solution and emulsion, and it will drop in its density quite a bit. So you want to go a little bit heavier and block it up, which is why we're going for a pretty long exposure right now. So I'm going to put it back into the burner for a while, and we'll see how it worked. Okay, so now the exposure is done. It's time to get the... Okay, so now the grand reveal here. So what's going to happen is you're going to see the image there, like I told you before when we looked at it halfway. You could see an image in there, and so there, see now? It's all printed out, and you can see it, but obviously there's a lot of yellow and unexposed emulsion on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it over here to the sink, and we're going to wash this out. Development is just in plain water. So for development, I just use a tray of room temperature water to begin with, and I can swap it out for more if I need it. But and as you can see, the image here is quite dark and blocked up. So, but you're going to lose a lot of this density immediately when I hit the water. Now you can also see the yellowing area here where the unexposed emulsion is, and that will also wash out in the development process here. So let's give it a shot, and there we go. So you can see how right away the image starts to lighten quite a bit, and I lose a lot of that initial density. And it looks like just about a perfect exposure. Yeah, I like it. It'll stay right about there. Now the other thing about Cyanotype is that it is going to darken a little bit over time. The blue will get a little bit more intense when it dries out and it meets oxygen. So when it hits the air and it dries, it'll dry with more of a dense blue in here. So great, I'm gonna let that develop a bit, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, so we've made our first cyanotype together. And as you can see here, it's a little on the light side. It looks a little on the light side in the video here, but it's just about right for me. Now you can always go for a little longer exposure. I think on this one we went for 45 minutes. I could go for an hour, it would change it a bit. You just have to test for yourself on the particular negative or whatever it is that you're using. And as you can see, you can use it for a lot of different purposes. You know, you can use it as a photographic kind of representation, or you can use it as a photogram, like in the Anna Adkins samples that I showed you there. But in either event, it's a lot of fun, it's real inexpensive, and it's real easy. I mean, you can do it at home. Anybody can do this at home. You don't need a contact printing frame, and you don't need, all you need is a piece of glass to be able to sandwich some things under. So, this is kind of a process that just about anybody can do in their kitchen if they really want to. So, in any event, it's a good time. I hope you had fun with it. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Those thumbs up are really helping. And if you haven't subscribed already, subscribe and hit the little bell so that you can get notified when I put new uploads in. Again, I really want to thank you for your time watching these, and for your patronage if you've followed on my Patreon account. Now, if you want to have a look at that, that'd be great. There'll be a link below to that as well. I've been doing a lot of different things. I'm planning on doing a lot more of these instructional videos. I think the next one that I want to work on is using cyanotype to go over platinum or over palladium, so you can see how I use it as an accent. and not just as a blue photograph. But in any event, they're a lot of fun to make. Go forth and have fun. Thanks very much for watching again. Thumbs up, subscribe, tell a friend. How about that? Anyway, take care of yourselves and bye-bye till next time.